All right, of course a criminal can repay their debt to society. And a lot of it would depend on what their crime was, but yes, they can repay their debt to society and rehabilitate themselves.
Well, I think that given the crime, I think that they can. There are certain things they could never repay, like taking of another human life. But we're all human and we all make mistakes, and I think that certain things they should be allowed to have paid their debt to society and then allowed to live a normal life.
Can a criminal ever repay his or her debt to society?
Yes, of course a criminal can repay their debt to society in many cases, but there probably are a few cases where really violent crime probably might be some bigger issues, but I would say for the most part, yes, people can repay their debt to society.
That a criminal can only repay his debt to society if what he has done can be undone. You cannot undo murder. You can't just do Control-Z and unmurder someone. That's not the way it works in the streets. So if you steal some stuff, you just put it back on the shelf or whatever. If you kill someone and they got a hole in their head and they're bleeding everywhere, you can't just say, oops, sorry man. So
I think it depends on the crime. Like if they kill a person, they can't give that life back to the society. And that's about it, you know? Like it depends on the crime.
Can a criminal ever repay his or her debt to society?
I would say it definitely depends on the type of crime and whether or not that is forgivable or adjustable as far as the eyes of society. If it is murder, I would say not, because you can't replace a human life. I would vary my opinion, however, if it were a lesser crime. And also, people who make announcements during video clips for projects should be penalized harshly. Thank you.
I believe that a criminal can, but of course it depends on what the criminal did. Like if they murder several people, then I don't think they can repay their debt to society, because you can't bring a person back to life. But if they like rob a store or do a crime that didn't involve killing someone, I think they can repay their debt to society, because people do change. But yeah, I think a criminal can repay their debt to society depending on what they did.
So, do you think a criminal can ever repay their debt to society? Well, if someone would ask me that, I would say it definitely depends on the crime. I think any crime that causes a family or an individual emotional distress or damage cannot be repaid, because you can't take back what you did to that person and how upset you made them or how you influenced their life. So I definitely don't think that. But if it were something like robbing a bank, you'd be you can do community service and stuff, but if you murder a person, you can't bring them back to life. So it depends. It really depends. So the whole point of this video was for us to evaluate whether or not a criminal can repay their debt to society or not. And in this case, we're talking about Peary Thomas from Down These Mean Streets. And I feel like Peary did repay his debt to society because he served a lot of time in prison. We all know that he made an obvious change in who he was and showed more self-control when he came out, but I think he still can't ever repay the cop that he killed, and that's something that's never really gonna go away. and he could do more to repay his debt within respect to the cop. But mostly he did. So, yeah.
So I believe that Perry Thomas did repay his debt to society because, like Megan said, he spent a lot of time in prison, and throughout his experience in prison, he did learn his lesson and he realized what he did wrong. And even though he murdered a cop, I still think that he felt guilt, so therefore he repaid his debt to society.